We are live. Hello, people. Come in, come in, come in. Hello, hello, hello. Happy Pride. Okay, so we are going to, let's see here. I'm going to get Justin on the channel from It Gets Better, and we're going to have a conversation. Let's see here, Justin. Go live with. Wow, it's like so many people are requesting to go live in addition to the person I'm going to be bringing on. Love the enthusiasm because this is going to be a major, major conversation. But wow, I'm scrolling. Okay, let's see. Are we in the room yet? It Gets Better. Let's see. Hey, everyone. Hope you've been caught up on Pose. On season 2 of Pose, I hope you're caught up. Do you see? That's Miss Candy. Yes, rights for that's a public image. It can be shown, y'all. We got rights clear. But yes, I hope you know all about Candy, and you all are fans of Candy. Let me look in this. Go live with which account? Let's see. Wow, this is a long list. I'm sorry that you have. IMVU has such an enthusiastic community. This is amazing. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Okay, I think maybe if, let's see. 1 second. We're going to get there, you all. We are going to get there. Wow. All the technology in the world is doing all kind of different things today. My computer won't even type. There we are. There we are. I just see it. I see it. Okay, there we are. And so, you ready for this conversation? It's going to get better right now. Right now.
Hello.
Hello there.
How are you?
I am good. I miss technology, but it seemed to be like trying to catch me up today.
No, I think it's totally fine. I mean, everyone's here for you anyway, so just seeing you is I think what's amazing about today.
You're so sweet, Justin. So sweet. So so let's give the people like a little, sort of container and
Let's
context
do
for why
it.
we're having this pride conversation today with It Gets
Mhm.
Better.
Well, yeah, there's two big communities here, right? There's IMVU community, which I'll let you speak to in a little bit for the It Gets Better folks that don't know. And then for the IMVU folks that don't know much about It Gets Better is a nonprofit organization that works to uplift, empower, and connect LGBTQ youth around the globe. We do it primarily through storytelling. And of course, I'm Justin. I am the Director of Education and Global Programming at the organization.
Amazing, amazing. So, okay, everybody, I hope you're ready. It's like 1,000 of us in here. Keep coming in, keep coming in. We're going to be having this live conversation, and it's going to be followed up by a virtual pride parade with me, Angelica Ross, in case you didn't know that already, and my friend Justin, Tindall, like not
Tindall.
Tinder,
No, not like Tinder. Tindall, yes.
Tindall. Okay, okay. So what is pride? What is pride?
Well, I think that there's so many different ways to look at pride. And what we're going to be doing later today on the IMVU platform is we're going to be celebrating, right? We're going to have this virtual parade and this virtual party. And that is one big aspect of pride. It's the opportunity to just be ourselves and celebrate who we've become and the identities that we get to embrace. But it's also a moment to like look back at our history. We talk a lot about Stonewall, and Stonewall is a pivotal moment in modern queer history. But it is not the first time that queer people have risen up to claim their space. We've been doing that since the dawn of time, and we're going to be doing it forever. we are going to be working to claim our spaces and to claim our identities. And so Stonewall is a piece of that history. It commemorates that moment when communities came together, specifically in New York City in 1969, in a hot summer night, to fight back against police brutality. And it is a beautiful moment to be able to celebrate and commemorate that history, a history, particularly that night in Stonewall and the nights that followed that were led by queer women of color, Black trans women specifically. And it's a beautiful thing, and that's what we get to celebrate. But we shouldn't ever forget the history part of it as well.
Absolutely. So, for me, Pride has turned into an opportunity for me to like really examine
Mm,
myself and examine my, relationship to community and
mm-hmm,
examine like how proud I am of all those things.
mm-hmm,
For me, like I think about us as a community and how far we've come and how far we still have to go. And the
mm-hmm,
fact that just in the LGBT community, we're just now starting to like elevate Black trans voices. We're just starting to be open within our own community to
mm-hmm.
non-binary identities, things that aren't just stuck on choosing male or female or identifying as such or feeling like you have to play up to some sort of role. Um, but for a long time, I feel like, if we're going to get like really, really real into the
Let's
situation,
get real.
yeah, let's get real about it for a second. When we talk about representation, like I'm on television, I'm
Mm-hmm,
in the storytelling sort of, lane. And if we left it to the hunters, to always tell the story, the lion would always end up being the prey. And so it's one of those things, like if you look back in the history books and look back in a lot of those things, um, just American history alone,
mm-hmm,
but then LGBTQ history has been
mm-hmm,
so whitewashed that we didn't know about the Marsha P. Johnsons and the
mm-hmm,
Sylvia Riveras and the ballroom scene from which all this language that all this, our
mm-hmm,
RuPaul Drag Race,
mm-hmm.
fans that using all the shade and all the, not knowing where all that language actually comes from. So, like, to be in a time where I'm now proud of the fact that people are starting to pay homage and recognize the real roots of our
Mm-hmm.
intersectional community, and
Yeah,
that's something I'm proud of now.
yeah. I think that, I mean, that speaks so much to the power of white supremacy, right? That like literally you can take real events, right? Like the Stonewall Uprising. You can take those moments in history and somehow retell them time and time again until the vast majority of people just assume that Black and brown and gender nonconforming bodies weren't there, right? That it was led by these gay white men. And it's just not true. And it's really unfortunate. I don't know where that power comes from. I feel frustrated at times that we let it happen, right? And I hope that through shows like Pose, we can retell that history, right? We can get into those history books and tell, especially young people, young queer kids who think that they're all alone, they should open that textbook, they should turn on that television and see the history as it was being made, the true nature of it, and not just the version, like you said, that the hunters want to share with us. I couldn't agree with more with that.
Yes. So, so I mean, like diving into this, I'll give a little bit sort of my background, a little,
Mm-hmm.
a little story for those that don't know, since not everybody knows who Angelica Ross is. I get it. I understand. But before I even sort of entered the field of being on television and doing all those things, I was one of the girls trying to figure out how to navigate a world that really was not open to trans people. So I
Mm-hmm.
started in spaces like AOL, in the chat
Mm-hmm.
rooms and things like that. And so it's been great to also see over time these communities. I've dibbled and dabbled in like this IMVU community of having these avatars. It's like avatar social network to
Mm-hmm.
be able to like kind of build community, find groups of
Mm-hmm.
people who sort of identify in the same ways. But what folks don't know is that that's kind of all we had in the beginning was
Mm-hmm.
virtual communities. Like that's all we had were these
Mm-hmm.
chat rooms. And we built community from there. I, personally have been through a lot of struggle. So, I haven't always looked this amazing and fabulous and all those things, but,
You're
I've
literally
gone,
glowing. You're literally glowing.
thank you.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, I think it's the blonde hair. I think it's, now having this blonde hair that's kind of got me together. But, you know, I have, it's no secret, I should say, that, I tried working in the beginning with an ID that did not match.
Mm,
The gender marker on my ID did not match what
yeah.
it was on the application. And so I got fired from so many jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while, you know, having two experiences, one where I'm being called a man at my job, I'm being harassed, people aren't using my proper pronouns, to now this offer in the adult world where they'll call me what I want them to call me, especially Miss Ross because I love that. But like they'll call me what I want them to call me, and they'll pay me on top of it. Like really pay me way more than I would be making at that damn job at Hardee's. Are
Mm-hmm.
you kidding me? Like or at a restaurant or whatever. So I found myself in this realm of the adult industry, and then found my way. It was like finding my way out by
Mm-hmm.
accepting the circumstances around me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And before I even really got into that industry, the person who owned the website was like, you are kind of techie on that computer, and basically had me become her webmaster, and start developing the websites, and photoshopping the pictures and designing the front page and graphic design. From that place I realized, wait a minute, I don't have to sort of expose myself, or I can be behind the scenes. And even if
Mm-hmm.
I were to do that, that's why for I'm so glad that I was introduced to the terms like harm reduction
Mm-hmm.
versus abstinence. Because when we talk about sex work, what we're really talking about is creating a world where all women have autonomy over their bodies, and they
Mm-hmm.
get to decide the value, and they get to decide when, where, with who, and how. And so that needs to be safe. And so right now with the murders of Black trans women being so high,
Mm-hmm.
we're so vulnerable on the streets where folks do know. It's not from a fact of not disclosing who you are. Again,
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of the girls, so coming from that industry, I know there was a whole lane created for us that people were looking specifically for trans women, but more
Mm-hmm.
so trying to cover their identities of being with us or being attracted to us, and creating these scenarios. So by using technology, especially with trans tech, I learned through my own experience of being offered pose in front of this camera, get naked,
Mm-hmm.
do these things, what have you, to okay, I'll not work for your website, I'll design my own website, and I decide the prices, and I'm doing this to, what, maybe this is not what I really want to do anymore. Maybe I just want to design different type of websites. But me being
Mm-hmm.
able to go from step to step without judgment,
Mm-hmm.
without anybody, without feeling, just with grace of saying, now I want to do something different. Now I want to do something more. And as I did that, I'm reducing the opportunities for harm in my life. With trans tech, it's my wish that through my using technology to remove me off the streets, to remove me out of that sort of pathway, that for some who want to be removed from that place, they can be removed from
Mm-hmm.
that. And for others, they can actually be more empowered, so they're not being exploited, but they get to decide and build and be entrepreneurs for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm hoping my legacy is that people, especially from the trans community, get to realize that you can choose, baby. You
Mm,
can choose whatever you want to do. You can choose whoever you want to be in this life. That's, you don't have to be beholden to any gender binary. You don't have to be beholden to any role. You can be an actress one day and an advocate the next day. You can be a, all these things. And what I love most, again, too, to bring it back to even IMVU and how I've been playing on that platform, is it really does encourage that creative side of me
hmm.
to imagine, like, what would it be like?
I love that. And what an incredible story. And I'm going to come back to so many points in your story because I think there's so much inspiration there to be gained. I do want to, for like a second, I do want to come back to a little bit of that pain, that experience. You mentioned it a little bit about going into a nightclub that you were headlining, you were working at, and being denied entry because of the gender marker on the ID. What what was that experience? How did that just feel, the weight of that moment?
I mean, it's a terrifying moment because you just
Mm,
don't know what's going to happen in that moment of conflict
mm.
between what they consider to be a reality on a piece of paper
Mm.
and what is the reality in
What they
living,
see right in
breathing
front of you. Yeah.
flesh right in front of you. Many times, I've had to understand the power in my
Mm,
ability to really be the author of my
mm,
own truth. And what
yeah.
I mean by that is, for instance, when I went to the DMV, when I
Mm,
was however old, to get my driver's license, and I went to uh, check the box at the
mm,
time for male or female. And I'm like, well, this piece of paper or whatever,
mm,
however they want to talk about this doesn't really reflect who I am. I mean, like, I know if I checked
mm,
male, that would be lying to myself.
mm,
And if I checked female, that, in some senses, I felt like I knew that America might want to come after me and
mm,
accuse me of fraud.
yeah.
When I realized that I'm not the fraud, the system is,
Mm,
that's when I realized I could be the author of my own truth, because it is
mm,
true. I'm a woman, period. I don't care who agrees, disagrees, or whatever. You don't pay my bills. You're not stopping me from doing anything. And that includes a policy. Because a policy is not going to stop me from going to the bathroom.
mm,
It is going to stop some of my friends who don't have the cis assuming privilege. And what cis assuming privilege is that I get to walk around to restaurants, to restrooms, through the airport. Everywhere I go, I get to walk around and people don't recognize that I'm trans. So I don't
mm,
have to deal with the vitriol that's a lot of trans people get. So it's one of those things where I have to then use my privilege.
mm,
And
yeah.
I think we're going to tap into those things as well, because, like, intersectionally speaking, as a community, all of us hold some kind of privilege. And the
Mm,
conversation is, how do we then turn that privilege into power? I, as a Black trans woman, realized I walked into this world with a deficit of privilege,
mm,
but I figured out a way how to make every single ounce of privilege I do hold count, and
mm,
how to shift that privilege into power. Because I am cis assuming, I get to do certain things that some of my trans community doesn't get to do. So I
mm,
shift that into power into my community.
yeah.
Same thing with academic privilege and pretty privilege and all of those things.
You definitely have the pretty privilege. We all can see that.
Thank you.
But I think there's so much power to what you just shared and what you just said. I just last week, I am a big fan of RuPaul's Drag Race. For those that are watching, there is a very, very big difference between drag and between trans identities. There was an amazing drag queen actually on RuPaul's Drag Race who was trans, Monica Beverly Hills. And she
Yes,
said that drag is what I do and trans is who I am. And it's one of the
absolutely.
best explainers for that. But one of the drag queens on the show this past week talked about a black queen. She's driving home from one of her jobs and she gets pulled over and she's in full drag. And she's telling this story to her sisters in the workroom. And that reaction that you just gave, all of a sudden, all the queens in the room were like, oh, because they understood the weight of that moment. They understood what was going to happen or what could happen when that police officer pulled her over, is going to see her, is going to check an ID that does not match what he sees in front of him. And who knows what could happen. And she actually did go on to tell that there was harassment and some violations in at the precinct because she was arrested. And it's not okay. It's not okay that something like that is happening in 2020. It is not okay that we can treat people differently simply because what we see on their ID, what we see on paper is not what we see in front of us. When humanity should always be about what we see in front of us, the human being there that we're relating to. So thank you for sharing that story. I think it obviously, like I said, there's a big difference between drag and trans identities. And at the end of the day, that drag queen can take off the wig, take off the makeup, and still be a man in society. But I think it speaks to the fear and the pain and the trauma that gender nonconforming bodies experience in this world.
Yeah, I intersect all throughout that same experience,
Mm,
and it's just so absolutely terrifying because you think about the history of the trans community and police, and the
mm,
fact that, like, as a trans person, you could be arrested for wearing women's clothing,
mm,
whatever is considered to be women's clothing. And so you had to wear so many pieces of clothes. Like, there was just all this whole rule that you had to kind of live up to. And then you've got, you know, many times me driving home from the drag bar in Chicago that I worked at, and just
mm,
not knowing, like, am I going to make it home safe? Having many times of being pulled over by police and not knowing what's going to happen. I remember specifically, like, uh, I was driving to a speaking engagement in Michigan,
mm,
and uh, at the University of Michigan, hired to speak.
mm,
And I'm driving a rental car, and it's a kind of nice one, but it's not that nice. And it's a two-lane highway, and so there are semis on the road as well.
mm,
And so I guess there's the law is like, you have in Michigan, is that if there's a two-lane highway, you can't just drive in the left lane. You can only go into the left lane to pass, but
mm,
most people
mm,
have to stay in the right lane or something like that. So I was in the right lane, but I would move out to move out of people's way. And so there was a
mm,
point where there was a cop behind me. I didn't know it was a cop at the time. And so I'm moving out his way and switching back into the lane in between two semis, even though I don't want to be in between them.
mm,
Then I drive out of that lane to get out between them and try to keep going for a minute until I can clear them, sort of. He's following me. He pulls me over.
mm,
And then at that point that he pulls me over, I'm super nervous because, first of all, it's a cop. Secondly, as he tells me to roll down the window, before he even asks, do you know why I pulled you over? He goes, why are there leaves in the floor of the passenger seat of the passenger, in the floor of the passenger seat? And I'm just like, um, I just got in, and I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, and so because I don't
yeah,
have like a really
it's a
solid
bizarre
answer for
question.
that, it's like creating this energy of, like, is
Hmm.
she not, you know, is something up here? And so he's like, where are you headed to? And I'm like, I'm headed to the University of, Michigan to speak. He's like, do you have a license for that? And I'm like, No, but I got a license to drive this car. But okay, you know, I'm thinking to
License to
myself,
speak?
he asked me if I had a license, like a license to speak. And I was
Wow.
like, no, I don't have that. He was like, well, do you have a business card? The only business card I had on me was me as the founder of Trans Tech. And so I
Mm,
immediately got kind of nervous because trans, you know, all
yeah.
these different things or whatever. And so then he finally asked me, do I know why he pulled me over? Um, you know, then tells me about this switching lanes situation, and continues to interrogate me before even giving me I held me there for about an hour. And the
Oh,
thing that people don't
wow.
understand is that I don't even, you don't even understand the terror that goes through Black people's bodies
Mm,
when we just see sirens, when we see the blue and red lights, when we hear the sirens, when, you know, I just last night I was driving with my girlfriend, my one of my friends, and we're just driving to the gas station or whatever, and every time we drove past like a cop or a cop was by, you know, we just both kind of tensed up, and it's just
mhm,
like, I'm just like, damn, that's not okay. Like, that's
mhm.
not okay for me to like to have to drive around with that kind of fear. It's not
No.
okay.
No, it's not okay. And you even said walking home from those bars in Chicago, right? Not knowing if you were safe to get home. No one should have to navigate this world in fear, especially doing things like driving to a job or walking home for a job, right? And I think I mean, kudos to the University of Michigan that gave you that opportunity, invited you to come and speak and to give you that platform. But I'm sure that didn't cross their mind when they asked you to come to Michigan, right? When they asked you, fly to this state, get in this car, drive to our campus, I'm sure they weren't thinking through all of those different scenarios that could occur to you along the way.
You know,
And
and
the fact that they don't even think those things.
unfortunately, I wasn't really thinking that either, you know,
Mm,
because sometimes this is what
we
happens.
shouldn't
It's
have
like
to.
I start to forget that you know, I start to forget that I'm trans and I'm thinking, oh, you know, I'm just a normal human being that's
Hmm.
able to drive around through life and do things. And then I forget as a Black trans person, whether I'm driving through Indiana, you know, certain parts that I have to remember, like if I'm driving at night, if I'm driving, my aunt told me way before like I transitioned, well, like at the beginning of my transition actually, my aunt told me, she was like, I know, you know, you're trans and everything or whatever. She was like, but I beg you, like, if you're driving at night, just put on a baseball cap.
Mm,
And she basically told me that she felt like I had less chances of being harassed by a cop if they read me as a Black male than as like a
mm,
female that they could possibly mess with. Because cops, especially Black women, have known for, especially Black trans women, have
mm,
known cops to sexually harass us.
mm. I not similar in any regard, obviously, but I have the fortune of living in West Hollywood in California, which is a queer mecca, right? It's a place that over 50% of the population is queer. And so I get the opportunity to walk down the street and express myself the way that I am. Um, Not during isolation, but before, I was able to go get my nails always done, always have them in bright colors. I wear super bright colors all the time, flowers and flamingos and all sorts of stuff. And that's just my life. That's how I express myself. I love bright colors. I love playing with gender in those ways. But my family's from Arizona. And when I forget just like you said, because I'm just living my life. But when I cross over those state boundaries and I'm driving home to my family, all of a sudden the panic sets in that like, oh my God, the length of my shorts or the colors of my shirts or the color of my nails is going to give me away. And being who I am in front of other people puts me at risk. And it shouldn't have to be that way. It really shouldn't have to be that way.
No, I think we need to. I think Pride is all about. I think one of the things I love about Pride is that it's a reminder that we exist in such a spectrum.
Mm,
That if we really knew how many corners of the world we cover, how many
Hmm.
rural parts of America, and how many places of international places, if we knew how to finally like kind of call in to the table all of our collective power,
Hmm.
it seems to me like we should be able to in this moment like ride this tide and overturn things.
Hmm. I couldn't agree more. And I think it brings us back to the point of what we're here for this call today and what you're doing on IMVU's platform, right? Is a lot of people don't find that opportunity to rise up and find community and be themselves IRL. So they turn to virtual communities. They turn to communities like IMVU, where they can go in, create an avatar, give it a different clothing, give it a different name, give it a different hairstyle, something that they may not be able to get to experience, like I said, in
Yeah.
real life, which is so liberating.
Yeah, I know I've had my moments online, and before I was able to really go out there in the world and felt very comfortable even talking to guys and stuff like that. I kind of started online and just created this safe space at first. So that's why, like, I definitely feel like IMView and even the developments that I think they're working on to even, make it so that folks can like swap clothing and do even more things
Hmm.
that fit into the sort of neutral space of things, so that there's more expression. I think it's going to be amazing.
Hmm. Well, I love that you mentioned AOL as like your introduction to being online. We're aging ourselves a little bit here, I think. I did MSN Messenger, and the chat rooms that they had available online. I remember creating technically an avatar, which is I don't recommend this for anybody, but I found some photos online. I created a persona of who I thought could be an openly queer kid in those chat rooms and to be able to talk to people. And it gave me a lot of power, and it gave me a lot of opportunity to explore my identity when I was a teenager. And I only imagine that teens are using IMVU to do the exact same thing. Um, what would you say? Because obviously, I'm here from It Gets Better, and we serve LGBTQ youth through Story. What would you say to kids who are looking for communities online, who are looking to access chat rooms and use avatars to really be who they want to be?
You know, First I would say safety first,
Hmm.
and just make sure because listen, the world hammer. Candy's hammer is yapping. Shh, quiet, baby. Quiet. I know. We're talking on Instagram right now. Can you hush? Bed. Go to bed. Bed. Thank you, baby. What I would say is that you want to make sure that you're safe,
Hmm.
um, honey. And so when you're finding communities, make sure when you're using like certain type of technology that you're being aware of like the geolocations and being
Hmm.
aware of how much information and how quickly you're sort of giving up that information to folks that
Hmm.
you don't know who might be, behind the chat or behind the avatar. So just practice safety first and foremost. But definitely feel free to not only express yourself, but know that it takes time. Even on
Hmm.
virtual relationships are built. It's like having a pen pal. When we used to have pen pals, those relationships were built over like letters being sent and over days and weeks. Getting to know someone and really sitting with their story. So in
Hmm.
the same ways, I would say as you're getting to know people in virtual communities, um, I wouldn't be so quick to. I know that the language that we have in social media is like add a friend, but I just wouldn't be so quick to really try to speed up the friendship to a place of really knowing that this is a true friend, but
Hmm.
work on building that relationship as a friendship because these online relationships aren't fake. These are
No.
very, very real. But it's
Hmm.
just that we also need to take the same amount of time in developing all the friendships and those romantic relationships into the points where we're willing to now share even more of ourselves that
Hmm.
are, a little bit more of who's behind the avatar.
Hmm. And I think that that's such important information and advice right now. I mean, the pandemic is real. We're all sitting at home. We're isolated from our friends. For a lot of queer kids out there, they're isolated from communities that they had at school or out on the streets that they can't necessarily access like they used to. And so taking the time to develop friendships online can be a really good and healthy thing. But I agree, safety first.
Okay, come here. Come here. Because he's not going to
She's
shut up. He's
jealous.
in my lap. Come on. Come on. You IMVU, you're going to
Everybody's
meet.
ready. Everybody's ready.
You're going to meet Hammer. He's named after Candy's hammer. That's Hammer.
Oh,
Hey,
oh,
Hammer.
what an
You saying
adorable
hello to the
dog.
folks? We're both a little blonde. Yes. Hi. Yes, I think I got to get a dog on IMVU. Do they have those on IMVU? I might need to get a dog too.
I bet you they probably do. Which
Yes.
we've been having so much fun. Yesterday, I jumped on there as well and was developing my avatar for the parade today, which is going to be on IMVU's platform
Right
just
after
after
this.
this call. So I'm super excited for that. You obviously are having a blast on trying out the different outfits and other things. Why do you think you're having such a great time with it?
You know, as a former queen, when I would perform, one of the great things about being a drag performer, and again, that's why I love what Monica Beverly Hills was talking about, is that like that was something I did. Being trans is
Mm,
who I am. But it takes time to change hair and makeup and do, all those things. And in InView, I can change it like within a second, with like an instant. So I love playing around because it actually gets me to think about things that I would actually really do in real life. So there's one dress that I was like yesterday when we were playing around. She's dancing to like doing the single ladies dance, and she's wearing this dress that's like super low cut in the front, and it's got a super low swoop in the back. And I'm like, yes, I'll take two of those in all the colors. Yeah, whatever. But like, I love the fact that even the fashion on InView seems to be push boundaries beyond probably what many of us would wear in real life,
hmm.
but it at
True.
least, serves as a creative point for me to think about some things I might challenge myself to do.
I love that. Well, earlier you also mentioned I love you have so many good like sound bites that I hope someone's typing down or recording and just like saving for later. One of the ones that you said you were sitting with someone's story. I love the visual of that because I think that's often what I do. We go and we watch television or we see speakers or we engage with stories all the time. But a lot of time we don't take that time to just sit back and just sit with the story. Let it process and let it go through our minds. The reason I brought that up is because last night I was watching Disclosure, which is a documentary film that you got to participate in. Could
Yes.
you tell everyone a little bit about Disclosure and what it's trying to show?
Yeah, Disclosure is this documentary that you must watch on
Hmm.
Netflix. And it talks about the history of how trans stories kind of have been told in media across scripted and non-scripted
Hmm.
platforms. And you really start to understand what
Mm.
the community's talking about once you see it all put together in one piece. And I think that's why people are sharing it so much and talking about it so much. Because once you watch Disclosure and you see all of these different depictions, from Transparent to The Crying Game to Pose to Laverne Cox on Orange is the New Black, and all of the, what are they, those crime stories, CSI,
Hmm.
Miami and SVU and all these things where it's like dead trans prostitute number one, number two, number three, never have a name, always being treated inhumanely, being treated in a way, always having like men playing trans women or having
Mm.
women playing trans men, in ways that really try to reinforce
Mm.
people's misunderstandings about trans people. When you think about your Jared Leto's and your Jeffrey Tambor's, when you think about these grown men who are
Mm.
in, uh, who are dressed up as women, who are playing women. These are cisgender men, men who do not identify as being trans,
Hmm.
now dress up to
Hmm.
show the world, this is what this is the struggles of what a trans woman goes through or what have you. And then they take the costume off and they go on stage and accept their award, and everyone sees that underneath it all is really just a man underneath all of that
Mm-hmm.
costume. And it
Yeah.
reinforces what people think about trans people, that we're putting on our gender, that it's
Mm-hmm.
something that we wear and not something that we are. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think disclosure really breaks down for folks, from the mouths of trans folks who have been in this industry since the beginning, even from a
The
trans
very
woman who no
beginning.
one even knew was trans, and
Mm-hmm.
she's just recently come out to find community. So
Mm-hmm.
disclosure is not, it's both for the people in the community, but so many people. Nicole Kidman today posted and tagged me in her post for disclosure because
Wow.
she thought it was amazing as well. Tracy Ellis
Mm-hmm.
Ross, like all, so many folks are really starting to see in Hollywood how we've misstepped in the narration of trans stories.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And of course, at the end of Disclosure, when they're kind of showing a lot of the progress that has been made, the shows that are doing it right is Pose, which is such a beautiful show and such a beautiful opportunity to highlight the lives of trans women of color, trans Black women in the ballroom scene. What what was it? What did you feel when you got invited to participate in that experience?
Yeah, I mean it's incredible and it's amazing and it's really historic, and I knew that it was going to create a ripple effect into our
Mm,
society. Um, I cannot tell you since season one aired, really, but obviously since season two aired, my DMs, my inboxes, Twitter, Instagram, everything is just so overwhelmed
mm,
with being tagged with people watching it and crying, people watching it with their families, people messaging me telling me how they have reconciled with their mothers and with their fathers and were able
mm,
to have some sort of cathartic healing from the words that Candy got to share with her parents.
yeah.
Um, and so, and also seeing a Black trans woman like Candy finally in a good light,
Hmm.
in good lighting. Oh, she was stunning in that good lighting, so
Hmm.
much so that the fro was just sparkling. You could see the sparkles in the fro. You could see, and it was it was such a mission of love, because so often trans people, and specifically Black trans women, don't get to experience that kind of love while they're living. We
Hmm.
see all these watercolor posters and we see all of these, sort of sentiments after they're gone. And
Hmm.
so to get a glimpse of what it looks like to see Candy receive her tens,
Hmm.
receive her flowers, be flanked by beautiful buff Black men that she so loves, and to even the costume designers that designed my costume for my final performance with Candy, um, on the shoulder there were like fringes. The whole dress was like a
Hmm.
red fringe dress,
Hmm.
and on the shoulders were rows of butterflies, and they were like
Hmm.
iridescent butterflies. And the costume designer put that special touch on there just for me, because she knows that I believe that trans people's experiences are so much that like of a butterfly.
Hmm.
And the span of our flight, the span of our life, seems to vary.
Hmm.
The coloring, the uniqueness seems to vary. But I think that as unique as those sort of panels are on a butterfly's wings,
Hmm.
so are sort of the the moments of our transitions that I feel that are sort of burned into our experience, that make us the beautiful butterflies on the outside that we
Hmm.
are. Our culture gets so fixated on the outside of what
Hmm.
people look like that they so many times miss the beauty on the inside.
Hmm.
And again, that's why I think it's so amazing when you can have platforms like IMVU, where You can do your best to, as you engage with people, create whatever, avatar that you feel reflects the beautiful person that you are on the inside, and be able to have people kind of treat you that with that first, because what they have, yeah, they're seeing this thing that they know up front is a creation, but they still have to know, you must know there's a real person behind that keyboard.
Yeah.
So let's try to get to know that real person.
God, I love that so much. You have such inspiring words to share, and I could just listen to you for hours. That soothing voice that you have. Um, well, what kind of stories do you want to see, right? Like Pose, I think, is just the start of some really, really great representation. What are other stories you want to see? What are some roles that you would love to perform in?
Well, for the latter question, what roles would I like to perform in? I have a feeling that I'm going to be president of the United States,
Love that.
on TV, not in real life,
Ah, okay.
on TV.
I'm like,
So,
I'm
so,
down to vote for you. I'll do it.
so no, ugh, no. But what I do want to do is I want to wait. Hold on. One second. Oh, my sunroof is open. Oh my God. Can you find my keys? They're down there. Can you try to close my sunroof? Okay, I think they're on the table. My sunroof is open and it's like stormy outside. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. My car's gonna be fine. So yes, so basically, where was I before we got interrupted?
President of the United States. You want to?
I will play the president of the United States on TV. I definitely see that happening. But what other stories I'd like to see, honestly, is when I think of the phrase, it gets better. You know what I think about? I think about how. And those are the stories that I want to see more of. I want to see the stories that show people how it got better. Because in reality, it gets better because you become stronger. Because you gain more experience in life that makes you able to withstand all of the challenges that your life presents to you. So for all the content that I want to see and be inspired by are not just my story and Janet Mock and Laverne Cox, Alexandra Gray, Isis King, all of these folks who start to blossom into their full selves. Wait a minute, how?
Yeah.
How did it get better for you? I want to see those stories.
I couldn't agree more. I think they're just like disclosure shows. I mean, there are enough stories about the trauma, right? There's a lot of stories about the trauma of what queer people experience out there. And then there are those triumphant stories of success and beauty and those things. It's how did you get from point A to point B, I think is what everybody is what everyone needs to see. We need to help paint that roadmap for the queer kids of tomorrow so that they can look to those stories, they can turn on their television, they can watch those films and know, okay, this is the stage I'm at. This is what I can do to get further along of where I want to go.
And not just them, not just, like these trans people and LGBTQIA plus folks who, show us how they're getting from point A to point B, but also everyone else in our lives, our family, our friends, our coworkers, our colleagues. Listen, we don't always start in the right place. We don't always say the right things. Some of us are digging our heels in right now below in this chat right now, saying a few things that you think I didn't see, but I'm just not bothered by it. So but I do want to tell the story and illustrate the story of how we all get to this very respectful place where we respect the dignity and the humanity of every person, that we respect them to be the authors of their story, that they can create themselves however they want. You see myself right now. IMVU, I can't even believe they kept up with me, because I went from having curly hair to having blonde hair just like that. And they said, okay, girl, wait on it. We got a blonde look right now for you. You know what I mean? So, and in real life, I will go from long hair down to my booty, blue hair, blonde hair to what have you. We have to create a world where what's the big deal?
Yeah.
for women to have that autonomy as well as men and everyone in between.
Mm-hmm. The journey is important, and I think a lot of storytellers, I mean, I'm not going to call out the name, but some of the people that created some problematic stories for trans people in the past have created shows where there was some very problematic representations of trans people, are now the same people behind shows that are celebrating trans lives and trans identities.
Oh, you
And
talking about my godfather Brian Murphy. I know. Trust me. Listen, Brian. Listen, me and Ryan like this. We
okay,
talk.
you can call it out.
Listen, Brian. Listen, we know we didn't have the conversation. So, like, on Nip Tuck and things like that back in the day,
Yes,
those were
exactly what I was talking about.
like, let me tell you something. That's why it's so important for folks to understand. Wow, what an experience could it be as a human being that I can turn on my television and I can watch and enjoy, all these kooky kind of shows and drama and all these things. And I'm just trying to watch it and I'm enjoying Nip Tuck and I'm like, oh my goodness, oh, woo, what's going on here? And then all of a sudden my face is cracked when I see a trans storyline coming on that is doing my community no favors.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, whoa. Or when I, as a Black person, love like the debate, the Dave Chappelle show. And I mean, crack up at so much of the stuff because I'm a Black person. Even white people too. Obviously, so many people love Dave Chappelle. As a Black person in that community, when you're watching and you're laughing along because you know all the things inside and out of being Black, and then your face is cracked when he starts with the trans jokes and when he starts doubling down on that, and you're like, my girls are dying and you're making jokes about this. Like it's not okay. So we have to create, it's heartbreaking. So we have to create role models and people who are willing to use their platforms to be intersectional so that when they have these huge followings, they can teach their followings how to be intersectional of immigrant identities, folks who don't have English as a first language, folks who don't have academic access, folks who don't have cis-assuming privilege, who don't have white privilege. You know what I mean? There's so many different intersections where we just have to learn that online and offline, we can create spaces that are safe for everybody.
Mm-hmm. I think you said it yesterday in our prep call for this, that you don't just want to call people out like that producer, you want to call them in. You don't want to just say, you did this horrible, you put these horrible trans representations on the TV. You should never have an opportunity to work with us again. Instead, you said, look, you got to fix this, and this is how you're going to fix it. And you're going to work with us to tell these stories better.
Oh, absolutely.
I love that sentiment.
Yeah.
And was that kind of how the conversations went? Was it like, you're going to do better?
Well, no, I mean, honestly, I think along the lines, it was a community conversation because I remember when Nip Tuck was out and I was not really known on the Hollywood side of things. I was known more on the advocacy side of things. So I was kind of a part of the voices that was like, that's messed up. That's messed up, or whatever the case is. So it's very interesting to see my life experience go so full circle where Ryan Murphy he understands so much so that he's not just putting our stories on screen and exploiting us or, that case. He's making sure that the stories we're telling are centering Black and brown trans people, as well as being written by Black and brown trans people, as well as being directed and produced by Black and brown trans people. Well, wait, there's more. As well as being acted out by Black and brown trans actors. Hollywood never let that happen before. And now all of a sudden, we have what I call restorative justice. That's what restorative justice looks like when we can restore power back into the communities, not just visibility, but equity. We can restore equity. So that's where it crosses the intersections of conversations like legalization of marijuana and things like that, where you see white people have are the ability to create Apple Store like miracle, stores, whereas Black bodies are still being incarcerated and policed around the use of marijuana. Where that intersects is at the identity of a Black trans woman named Treasure, who is no longer here.
There's a documentary named Treasure by Dream Hampton that tells her story about how she was just on her balcony smoking a blunt.
Mm,
And a cop saw her from the balcony of the hotel, knocked on her door, arrested her to have her call her weed dealer to ask for all kind of things that she never orders as like a setup. They
mm,
sting and arrest the guy. They obviously let them know who connected them to him, and those people killed her. That bit within 24 hours,
God.
he was let go and they killed her. The relationship that the cops have, that police have with the most marginalized communities, um, has to be fixed. We have to
Yeah.
understand that police, um, if we look at the data that the federal government provides as well, a lot of the things that they are doing are unnecessary. We need them
Mm,
to focus on the things we need them to focus on, but there's
yeah.
a lot of unnecessary blood, a lot of unnecessary death, and a lot of unnecessary harassment because they don't know how to respond
Mm,
to the needs of our society. When you have someone that's having a mental health breakdown, it's not, the appropriate response is not to call the police.
yeah.
When you have a black person who is locked outside of their home trying to get in, the appropriate response is not the police.
Mhm.
It's a locksmith.
Yeah. I I mean, such powerful stories to share to kind of depict some of the challenges that are happening in this world and where those identities intersect. And bringing it back to the point of talking about Ryan Murphy is that him extending those opportunities, giving that power to Black and brown trans people to tell those stories, direct those stories, act in those stories, did nothing to his power, right? He still is one of, as far as I can tell, one of the highest paid storytellers in the biz, and still has a whole ton of shows that he gets to work on.
I think
It,
all it did was exponentially grow that for him
exactly.
because he's
And,
being seen as the person who's willing to do it.
yeah. And that's where I think people need to realize, and I think that's where sometimes the conversations stop, is that people think that when we say that there's privilege and there's power and that it needs to be shared, that that means that it needs to be completely taken away from other people. And what it really means is what you were saying, it needs to just be more equitable, right? If there is a white cis man who can own a weed company and sell it like it's an Apple store, and then there is a Black trans woman who's simply smoking a blunt on her balcony, the experiences of how they interact with the police and with the system should not be so vastly different. They
It's
should be the same.
absolutely, and not even, yeah, I mean, and I just even push back on the same. It's like, do we even need that at all? Like,
Mm,
can we imagine a new system? I think we're just so used to someone. Can you imagine folks who play games? Can you imagine them releasing the
mm,
version of the game and saying that's all you get for the next ever?
mm,
That's just what it's going to be. No update packages, no nothing. Like, this is just what you get.
yeah,
No way. With all the creativity and imagination that we have, we can reimagine a different system.
yeah. Why not?
Why not?
I love that. Well, we have a Pride Parade to go to. It is
Yes, we
time for us to
do.
move over to the IMVU platform. But, well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for such amazing, amazing answers. I also want to know, just kind of to leave this out for those queer kids that are watching us right now, what kind of message of support, encouragement, motivation would you want to share with them to end out this official Pride Month today?
I just want to encourage you. There's a book I someone gave to me once upon a time. It's called Free Play by Stephen Nachmanovich or something like that. And I learned this word Leela, and it's
Mm,
called, and Leela stands for divine play. It's
mm,
this space where there's actually something spiritually profound, divinely profound about that creative expression,
mm,
like play.
mm.
we're in an environment and a world that wants to capitalize on our bodies and make us work all the time. But just as important as work is, if not more important, I think is to play. Is to play with your creative expression, play with how you express your own identities, and don't let anyone limit that. Really, the limit is only your imagination. That's my advice. Play.
Like I said, I could listen to you for hours. Just could you just be like my morning like app that gives me a word of motivation?
I sure can. Just write a grant for it so I get paid for it and all that good stuff, and we'll make it work.
Done. Well, again, thank you so much for allowing me to be on this call with you today, just to ask these questions. I love learning about you and your story. I see clearly so much success in your future and so much opportunity, and I can't thank you enough. You're
Thank
amazing.
you. Let's get to this party now.
Let's do it. So for
Y'all, come
those,
on to the IMVU platform. Get into the party. Pride 2020.
yes.
It gets better. Come on.
So you go to, for people that are coming from the It Gets Better side, you can go to imvu.com. You can make a profile, you can create an avatar, and you can join the Pride Party that's over there on that platform. We're going to be there with our avatars having a good old time.
Yeah, see you there. I'm going to be
Yes.
dancing.
And one last thing, today is National Give Out Day, which Give Out Day is the only national day of giving specifically for the LGBTQ plus community. Since 2013, it's raised over $6 million for over 700 LGBTQ organizations like the It Gets Better Project. So if you're interested in donating or giving today, head over to itgetsbetter.org/donate, and we would appreciate the support.
Absolutely. Party. It's time to
Party.
party.
We're going to
See
be
y'all
dancing for
soon.
sure.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.